CNG. I know, or I believe they also have where it could be readily available. Since it's also a Chinese firm that is bringing the kits, that means there's some form of wonderful technology behind it, and it will definitely work for them. And once it works, other people will copy it.
I know you mentioned wonderful technology, but I know another word that would have come in there somehow would have been credibility. And the first time you mentioned, since it's a Chinese firm, it has some human face to it, and it means that we can trust. Why do we have this ideology when we talk about foreign industries or foreign firms?
Well, foreign firms, they have a lot of things going for them. There's our sustainability, there's high-level credibility, except they are infiltrated. But so long as they are not infiltrated, you allow them run it the way it ought to be run, they will never compromise. And once they don't compromise, then it becomes a reality.
They would never compromise? Are you saying they will never compromise because
I say once
it's a
they
foreign...
don't compromise.
Is it because it's a foreign firm?
Yes, because it's a foreign firm, their name is at stake. They wouldn't want to...
So local firms, our names are not at stake?
Not that their names are not at stake, but they are easily infiltrated. One, given the fact that profit maximization, in fact, profit has always been their major aim of going into business.
Is it different for foreign firms?
Of course, first, their name is at stake. Then, once their name is at stake, it talks about credibility. So they must do it according to international standard and global practices. That's one thing that goes for them. But you know the Nigerian factor, some of these are Nigerian, they like cutting corners. And that's where we always run into problem. But this point, they must definitely adhere to international global practices.
But we cannot rule away the fact that the corruption we see in Nigeria is in other countries also.
It is in other countries, but it's not as pronounced as it is.
Yes, but the way we
corruption.
take it completely out, as long as it's a foreign company that is involved, is what I'm trying to look at and find out why.
First, why I say being a foreign company, they have their standard practices.
We also have our standard practices here.
But we always cut corners. While these people, they will always tell you that these are the steps, these are how they must do it, and this is how it ought to be done. That's how they do it in their place, and it's been working for them. So that's why I talked about credibility and compromising. They have a high level of keeping to standard, following the global practices, but this side of the world, there's always this idea of cutting corners because we want to make more profit.
But you agree that there are credible firms here also?
We have some credible firms, but I don't know why the system has not really allowed them.
What do you mean?
Who do I know?
What do you mean, not who?
Okay.
What do you mean by the system has not allowed them?
First and foremost, you know, Nigeria, corruption has become part of way of life in Nigeria. I'm sorry to say, even in the citadel of holiness, which is supposed to be the church and the opium of the society, it has also crept into the church.
Because there are human beings there.
Of course. So it's already eating deep into the fabric of the nation.
This is a serious problem. Some Nigerians do not trust our own sin. As long as it's coming from Nigeria, they believe it will not work. You hear of a major road being constructed, and immediately you hear it's a local firm, you already, or a local contractor that's handling it, you already believe that that is, you know, going to be substandard. And some people say, oh, they give it to carpenters.
No, it's not really being given to carpenters. First, the corruption, even from the supervising ministry. Okay. The first thing they do is that they look at the bill of quantity. They always tell you, by the time you reduce the quantity of XYZ, the difference that is supposed to be there, you're going to give it to us. That's always the problem. Ordinarily, if you look at the bill of quantity of every, they are standard gauge or they are basic centimeters, but they will tell you, instead of doing 12 cm, do 6, do 9, and they'll come measure it and tell you it's up to the 12. So that's where even the corruption starts.
So it's not just in one parastatal, it's not just in one aspect.
No, you talked about road,
aspects,
and I told you that from my experience or from little findings, it even starts from the supervising ministry.
But I'm more concerned when you say the system will not allow even the people who are credible to thrive. Because we need to change the narrative. And definitely, I know that there are people who are bent on changing the narrative. But saying they can't thrive, it's cause for concern.
Part of the problem we have is that some people who they think that if so person gets to this position, they will definitely give us problem. They are not even given the chance to rise. So they always look for those people who will definitely play games with them. Those people who will toe their line so that everything will fall.
And if you don't
get there.
You don't even get there in the first place. But how are the credible businesses that we have thriving at the moment? Because you said earlier that you also believe that we have credible firms.
Sure, we do have some credible firms, but then it is what it is. The system will not allow them to thrive.
All right, you know, we're talking about, but let's go back to the innovation now. It's just that when you mentioned that, caught my attention, like, why do we not trust our own thing? Why do we always talk down on our local firms, you know, industries, and when it's something foreign, we say, oh, it's a foreign company, so because of that, it's credible.
No, I want to correct an impression.
Yes, please.
There are some firms coming from other parts of the world. Some also are portfolio companies, but if you find out they are credible companies that are on ground, they have verifiable offices and industries, their name is always at stake. So it's a two-way thing. Even in Nigeria, we have some companies that are already on ground, who are already doing business, they have a name, and we also have the portfolio companies.
Like portfolio farmers, like the farmers I've mentioned. But let's look at this innovation. This is coming from the university. How do we get to encourage our innovations? People have complained about that. But looking at what is going on with this now, would you say we're coming up with encouraging our innovations and research?
Of course, you know, we said that the university, apart from being a place of learning, it's also a place of research, innovation, and technology. So if the universities are going beyond just a place of teaching, now going into research, innovation, and technology, that means we're heading towards the right direction. All they just need now is funding. Because every of this is capital intensive. So by the time you fund them adequately, it will go a very long way for them, and it takes pressure off them. All they just need to do now is just to sit down, do the research, work with their partners, and the result will be there. Instead of looking for funds and also doing research, the attention will be divided.
When we talk about practicals and research in universities, eyebrows are usually raised. If someone gave an example of students in, you know, maybe civil engineering in a particular, you know, department, and then a project is going on in the university that regards or that concerns that department, and you don't see students in that department getting involved. You see them employ something that is outside what they're doing.
Of course.
So how can practical be outside what people are going to school to do?
Practical, it's because of the curriculum one. Then I also told you the timing of, there's a lecture time conflicting with
That's what
the
I'm
time
saying.
of the project.
That's what I'm saying. That is lecture on its own. So when you say the lecture time, it looks like, oh, book time. Then this one is just leisure.
It's not about leisure. Why I say it's not about leisure? If you go on your own to gain extra...
No, not them going on their own. This is what I'm trying to explain to you now. The same way you place importance on the lecture time,
yes,
that's the same way this should also be seen as important. Because how do they go to school and you see someone who studied civil engineering, you see someone who studied practical courses, let's put it that way. Practical courses, and they have little knowledge about the practical aspect of it.
First, you say students of civil engineering, because we narrowed it down to civil engineering.
Yes, because someone gave an example of that. So just students with practical
Of course,
courses.
It's left with the National University Commission to put it as a kind of law.
Do you think they should?
They should. They should. Because if you look at it technically, I have a civil engineering department. A civil project is going on in my university or in the university. Students of civil engineering in that same university, they are not part of it. That means it's an aberration, it's an abnormality.
All right, so practical should also be looked into, bringing it into our curriculum and getting the students involved. We've heard people who studied agriculture talk about practicals not being, them not really carrying out practicals. In fact, I've heard some of them say it was when they graduated from school and then they went for their youth service and they farm. That was when they understood a lot of the things that they were writing on paper in school.
I don't understand. When I say I don't understand, a university that has a faculty of agriculture, they should have demonstration farms.
That has a farm. Please add that.
They should have
because they do. Some of them you find them, you see it in the universities now. You see the farm there. But you start hearing things like, oh, they don't have the equipment that they should use. You start hearing things that some of the things that should be available are not there. And then the students maybe being more than what is provided, than what they have to use for practicals, and all of these challenges that they get to mention.
I think for me, after accreditation, there should also be some level of validation. It's just like in the Christendom, being born again or once born again does not mean always born again. You can always backslide. They can fall by the way. So all they just need to do as a regulatory body of the university, even if they accredit some of these faculties, over time they come back, look at it. It could be a period of 5 years, 3 years. They come back, look at the department again. If actually what they have is still what is on ground, or they have fallen by the way.
All right. So you don't. That means you're stating that there probably are no provisions for checks.
Of course.
And follow-up and maintenance.
Yes. No, but first, if there's a check system where they come back to check if the faculty is still what it is, then there will be need for the faculty at every point in time to see how they maintain their equipment, how they also upgrade and become better than the way they were before.
When you say they coming to check these faculties and these places, who are you referring to?
The National University Commission, because they are the ones that accredit faculties. Okay. And for any university to have a full-fledged faculty, they first come for inspection, then give them that accreditation to show that that faculty is properly accredited and they can bring churn out graduates for that field of human endeavors. So after accreditation, there should still be checks where they come back periodically to check if the things which they saw at the beginning before they were accredited are still in place.
And to think there are actually people on ground to manage these facilities, it begs the question, what's going on with them?
If there's a proper check and balance system, the universities will always be on their toes, knowing very well that after a period of time, these people will come back. So all they need to do is to have a proper maintenance plan.
All right, thank you so much for your thoughts on that one. Let's go to the National Assembly now. The House of Representatives has criticized the Central Bank of Nigeria on the validity of old and new Naira notes. They say, oh, it was a mistake. And it was a laughable situation at that time.
That's why I say there is no synergy, or even the reps doesn't even know why he's there. There are some things you say, you need to consult widely. You don't just say them on public domain because you want to make news or you want to make name. Because you must think about the rippling effect. Okay.
But Nigerians are asking why we have two of the same note. Why do we have 1,000 Naira two? We have the old and the new. We have the old and the new 500 Naira. We have the old and the new 200 Naira. And people are even mixing these things. Some people have still not gotten used to it till now.
Anyway, it's the Nigerian factor. Let me say it on a rather sarcastic. After all, we have two national anthems.
No, we don't have two national anthems. We have a national anthem. The Nigerians have refused. They said it's not their national anthem. They refused to embrace it.
It's the old one that was brought back, and it becomes a new.
Yeah, so that's the new one now.
And the new became the old.
Exactly. And the people have said we have only one. And they have functions. They have functions, and they still recite the old one.
The old one.
So we call it the old one now. Do we call it the old one? But they still recite the one they want to recite. So that's quite funny.
It's very funny.
That we have two events in one country in a day, and one singing one national anthem, another is singing another national anthem. But this, even though it's on the lighter note, it tells a lot about our unity. It tells a lot about the ideology. It tells a lot about the people and the leadership. So it looks like these are two individuals.
For me, as a people, our problem has never been the anthem. Our problems are policies. That's our basic problem. But
that's still what it shows. The anthem was released, and then leadership summits and such meetings where our leaders meet, they sing the national anthem, the old one which has become new. they sing the Nigeria We Hail Thee national anthem, right? But then the people on the other side have said that is not our national anthem. So we will sing what we want to sing. That's the division I'm drawing your attention to.
Yes.
And like you have said, policies now, that division still shows in those policies. Because you see policies, people would say it's not people-oriented, but it is for certain people. And that is still bringing about the division.
Our problem in Nigeria, the basic problem is hunger. Not until hunger is addressed, unity is elusive. Because it's natural, a hungry man is an angry man. Except you address hunger, then the man will now reason.
So every other policy and everything the federal government is saying right now, you're not listening. They just want hunger to be addressed. But Nigerians also have to be told that for hunger to be addressed, there are certain steps that will be taken. And that's why you need to also pay attention to these steps that are being taken, because they will affect your stomach at the end of the day, since the problem is hunger.
I've always told people Nigeria is like a patient that is either in cancer or that is in coma. You don't take someone who is in coma into theater for surgery. You need to stabilize the person before you put the knife on the person. If you take someone who is in coma into the theater, you're killing the person. So for some of these policies to even thrive, first hunger needs to be addressed.
And the
kind of hunger that needs to be addressed is not about spoon feeding people.
Okay, it's not palliative.
It's not palliative.
Okay.
It's not palliative.
Then what
the basic problem we have is rising cost of goods and services on daily basis. In fact, I was even talking with a friend the other day. So she doesn't even make lists before going to the market. All she needs to do is to go with her ATM card, because the same price which you bought last week, you'll be shocked that when you get to the market today,
the price you got it yesterday will not be the price you get it the next day.
Then the next question we need to ask, what is the basic cause of this high cost of goods and services? Once you address those things, the prices of goods and services will drop. Then we now talk about unity of a country.
As someone said that the unifying factor right now is hunger.
It's not a joke. It's not a joke. That for the fact that we're privileged, we work, we're able to pay some bills. You even discover today that your salary can even, those days they say take home salary, but now it's no longer take home. You cannot even take it to your junction.
So it can't take you home anymore. That is very sad. And that's why my heart always goes out to the people who are still receiving, especially the old minimum wage. My heart goes out to them. Each time we talk about minimum wage and we find out that the governors have not even started paying. Now, even before then, I know that we've not heard any reports that the governors who were paying the 18,000 naira as at when the 70,000 naira was passed, who have to it bad, as it was filed 3 months after the appointment beyond the legally allowed time frame. The communities argued that ABA's appointment violated NDDC's provisions, which require the chair to be from the area with the highest oil production. The suit was registered and it named President Tinubu, the Senate President of the Federation, and the NDDC as defendants. What do you have to say about this?
You know, in law, we always tell people there's timeline, there's locus, and there's also jurisdiction. You might have a good case, but if it is bereft of these three, then your case is already an exercise in futility, dead on arrival. So it is what it is. 3 months after the time, where were they when he was being appointed? For them to have filed, they did not file. So some of the problems we have in Nigeria, in fact in the oil producing community, is a question of where people claim that it belongs to them directly. And that's why even this resource control, if we don't manage it properly, we might end up killing ourselves in the Niger Delta. Why I say we might end up killing ourselves in the Niger Delta is that people will now claim direct ownership of it, and it's not a good sign. So some things are even better managed in the hands of the federal government so that they could be distributed.
Are they better managed now?
Well, because for a people now to rise up that for somebody who is from Delta State to be appointed the chairman of the Niger Delta Development Company, because he is not from an oil bearing. But the first question, is he from a Delta State? That's the next question they will ask.
But they said that's the provision, and that's the criteria.
That's the criteria. Anyway, they came too late, so they should wait for next time.
Okay, so because things were not done right in the first place, it should be allowed to thrive.
Of course, you can't put something on top of nothing.
What do you mean on top of nothing?
You might have a good case, but I told you the timeline, which has to do with the status bar, the jurisdiction, and it also has to do with the locus.
Okay, so aside what they have stated as the problem now, what they have hinged on, the fact that he's not from a particular area, let's look at the activities of the NDDC. Some people see the NDDC in a particular way, while others see it in another way. I don't want to start calling the actual way they see the NDDC. But individuals have called for the scrap of the NDDC. Some people have said they don't know why the NDDC is even there. Are they really carrying out the practice of why they were formed in the first place, especially under this current leadership?
Well, with the kind of development that has gone or has taken place in the Niger Delta since the NDDC was established,
yes,
I think calling for the scrapping of the commission is, for me, it has no human face.
Okay.
First and foremost, before the establishment of the NDDC, what was the development in the Niger Delta and the oil producing areas? But today, NDDC has brought life to the Niger Delta. We now have an agency of government that addresses the peculiar problems of the Niger Delta people.
But people have argued that there are lots of abandoned projects from the NDDC.
All they just
in
need...
fact, when you talk about abandoned projects, anyone would want to mention the NDDC.
First, all they need to do is that they need to sit down. All they need to do, like I said, sit down, carry out a need assessment of projects. Once you carry out a need assessment of project, you know where this project is going into. Do they actually need it? Is it viable? Can the commission fund it over a period of time? After answering that question, the next thing now is monitoring. Because if you don't monitor, there will always be abandonment. After monitoring, you now talk about funding. Has the federal government been able to fund the commission properly?
Has the federal government not been able to fund the commission properly?
So that once they pay you directly, they follow you up. You get a particular milestone, you get what you want. Then you move to the next stage. But another problem again also that has affected projects is rising cost of goods and services, inflation.
How?
You might have a project, and the timeline for this project is 18 months or 24 months. The price of cement and a trip of sand are sat when the project was awarded, and the next 6 months. Is it the same?
Big question. But you know, they are not These things you just mentioned, I don't think the contractors are not aware of the market forces when, putting down their costing. This is what you have a business. You have been running it for some time. You know what happens after a while. So that should not, if I have a deal with you, that should not affect my deal or our agreement when you did not put that in place. What do you think?
It should. What I say it should, because it's not my fault, neither is it your fault. It's a question or a fault of market forces. So it's a situation where...
So you pay your children's school fees for 1 year ahead of time. And then the school comes to tell you that the money you paid, you have to add to it because there have been an increase. After you have your receipt and all of that already settled.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Because there are certain realities that you cannot deny. These are very obvious facts that you as an individual, you see it. You don't even need for serving Nigeria. But if the banks are involved, like what the bank do, they don't give you cash at hand if you're doing a project. They will tell you if you want to buy from so-so manufacturer or so-so dealer, send this invoice to us. They pay direct to the... And they don't give funds direct to the contractor.
Okay, so that should solve the problem according to you.
Of course, it should. Because part of the problem we have is diversion of funds and misappropriation.
You don't think one of the problems with the NDDC have been the leadership in any way?
First, it's a combination of factors, not just leadership. The government, they have also failed in their responsibility. Because if you look at it, this whole thing is an agreement. And for every agreement, there are parties in an agreement. So if party A doesn't keep to his or part of the agreement.
Interesting stories I would want you to be part of. Please stay with us.
The people of Maiduguri need your help. A catastrophic flood has engulfed the city, leaving over 1 million residents stranded and fighting for survival. And entire communities are submerged, with people trapped inside homes and on rooftops, cut off from food, clean drinking water, and essential supplies. Health experts are warning of a potential outbreak of deadly diseases, and medical facilities are out of commission. The situation is dire. Helicopters, boats, and high-riding trucks capable of navigating the treacherous waterlogged areas are urgently required to reach the countless men, women, and children still awaiting rescue. The Nigerian media is issuing a desperate plea to the government, humanitarian organizations, international actors, and citizens across the nation. Step in now, before it's too late. For more information on how you can help, contact Professor Usman A. Tar, the Honorable Commissioner for Information and Internal Security, Borno State, on 0809 233 3955. Every second counts.
This is powered by Atlantic Television Network.
And definitely it is still Atlantic Sunday. Welcome back. Let's move to our next story. Minister of Finance Wale Edun has outlined Nigeria's unique inflation challenges, linking them to high import dependency and a large informal economy. Speaking at the National Economic Council on Tuesday, Edun contrasted Nigeria's inflation struggles with advanced economies, which have achieved inflation control through balanced economic policies. Edun highlighted measures aimed at easing economic pressures on Nigeria, removal and foreign exchange reforms. He noted that the relocated subsidy funds, once $15 to $20 billion annual expense, are now directed towards critical social and infrastructure projects. The minister also introduced policies to stabilize petroleum prices by requiring local refineries to purchase crude oil in Naira, which has generated a monthly fiscal boost of about 700 billion naira for national projects. Welfare programs include minimum wage increases, direct financial aid, and wage support for low-income workers with biometric verification, ensuring accurate disbursement to over 5 million households. For that, the administration has rolled out support for education and small businesses. A student loan program has provided over 90 billion naira to help students manage expenses, while nearly 50 billion naira in grants and low-interest loans have been allocated to boost SMEs. It also revealed a 9-month foreign exchange repatriation program to strengthen reserves by integrating offshore dollars into formal economy without penalty. Edo underscored the government's focus on sustainable growth, expressing optimism that reforms and targeted interventions will steer Nigeria towards economic stability. How do you see this analysis of all of the things, almost, or should I say some of the things that have been done in Nigeria and how they have gotten to affect the economy?
Was he talking to himself? Because for all I care, what he's doing is self-appraisal. You cannot be a judge and jury in your own case. You cannot appraise yourself. There must be an independent body to assess you, appraise, and score you. What he just did is tantamount to self-appraiser, blowing his own trumpet, which doesn't make any sense. Because what he's saying and what we have on ground are two different things.
Really?
Of course.
But he talked about the monies gotten from subsidy removal being channeled into social welfare and all of that.
So have you gotten any social welfare? Or do you know who has gotten? or are there people who have come out to say, okay, we have gotten? So for me, what he just did is self-appraisal. And it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work anywhere. Okay, talking about projects, infrastructure. Which infrastructural project or development have they been able to carry out since May 29th last year?
Even the
coastal highway. Where, have you seen, where are they starting from?
What about the railway?
The railway.
We had that completed now.
We've completed the railway.
We had that completed in the FCT, and we saw, even though some
the cost of production is even stifling the local production of goods and services. So if you look at it technically or rationally, there are certain steps or certain policies they made which has really increased the prices of goods and services in this country. Between May 29th last year and today, can you tell me how many percent inflation rate or how many percent prices of goods and services has gone up?
If we start making calculations of how many percent, it will shock you and shock everybody who is listening.
Because virtually we are the ones now working for them.
Sometimes when I go back, not like we're just sitting down to complain about issues happening, but sometimes when we go back to the prices of certain products just few months ago, and by few months ago, maybe a year ago, right? You'd notice 300% increase. And you'd wonder how this happened within a short period. For
fuel that we were buying
exactly where I was going.
Less than 200 or even 200 naira, and we're buying nearly 1,314 per liter.
So let's talk about...
That's how many percent increase?
When we talk about the increase in prices of goods and services, we definitely would point at local production, right? Local production. Even people have been talking about local production. We have local production now. But then, what is the situation? We still have increased, the price is still up there. More than what
the local production is a monopolized local production. And for business to thrive, there must be healthy competition. That's the only thing that will make business thrive. That's the only thing that will liberalize prices. That's the only thing that will also ensure availability of products when you have options of where to buy. If the market or the transportation will also reduce to get the product, you discover now that you have options and there's healthy competition. Take a look at the telecommunication industry in this Nigeria. When it was in the hands of government alone, telephone was for the rich. It was a status symbol. It became a bragging right if you don't have it. And I could beat my chest and tell you that in a particular street, you might not see a telephone. Maybe within a community, people who own telephone lines, as are there, wouldn't be more than 4 or 5 in a big... That's in town, not even in the village. Not even in the village. In town, you could count barely few households that had access to nighttime lights. I mean, process. It's not just fuel alone. There are other byproducts that follows the refining stage. So, for me, let's just...
A lot to be gotten from that. And when we talk about production now, since he has talked about inflation being worsened because we're depending on importation, let's talk about our production here in Nigeria, local production and manufacturing companies. We've realized and noticed that some of these companies import even their raw materials that they use for production. And sometimes you notice that some of these raw materials can be produced here in Nigeria. So you begin to ask, if we can produce this here, why are we importing it? It brings us back to what the government is doing with fuel. us having crude oil, even though that's a raw material, but then we're importing, that's even on the other side, importing the finished product.
Yes.
Yes, we have companies that import these raw materials, and they import it at, you know, a very high rate.
Going back to what I said earlier, that every refining stage has so many products that comes out of it. So if this refining of petroleum product is taking place here, you discover that so many byproducts will be sent to the petrochemical, some will be sent to Indorama, and before you know what is happening, the fertilizer producing company, before you know what's happening, we'll have so many byproducts that will also boost local production. But because we export crude oil, after exporting crude oil, they refine it there and only bring fuel, kerosene, and diesel
So
with
every other thing that would have been gone. All right, that's it on that story. We hope to see more production in Nigeria. That would really help our economy, as we're talking about that. And then all of the, according to you, praises that the Minister of Works are doing. Let's look at our next story. According to reports on this one, we're talking about the underage detention. Following public outrage, Nigeria's Attorney General Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, has intervened in the prosecution of 114 #endban governance protesters, including minors that are facing charges of treason and related offences. Fagbemi, responding to widespread criticism over the treatment of the detained children, has ordered the police to transfer the case files to his office and aims to expedite the trial. The detained protesters arrested in August appeared in court under visibly poor conditions, with some minors reportedly fainting due to malnutrition. And they were granted bail but will remain in detention until their trial resumes in January 2025. Key figures like former presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi condemned the government's handling of the case, labeling it as an affront to human rights and calling for compassion, particularly for the minors that are involved. Responding, the counsel to the federal government, Remazonte Ezekiel, who briefed journalists after the ruling on Friday, claimed that the minors, listen please, have wives who came with their parents. The minors have wives, and they also said that some of the people who were seen in videos as minors are just children who came to court with their parents. They are not the actual detainees. Now, in his words, he said these boys that we brought to the court today are adults. Most of them are married men. None of them is a minor. And we are looking at the picture of the children. I don't know if adults now look like children, because there are lots of them. And if it was just one person, we'd say, okay, maybe this one has, you know, a particular statue, but then, or stature rather. But then these are the children altogether. It said some of them are university graduates. That the small kids that we are seeing there came with their parents to come and greet their loved ones. In his words, I just quoted him, that's how he said it, to come and greet their loved ones. You know, there are lots of aspects to this story, from the statement by the federal government to the 10 million naira bill, to the treatment of these children, these minors, as we have seen in the video, when they were in detention, and the fact that they were fainting when they came to court. It begs the question, what would have been their situation when they were in detention. Maybe they have been fainting there, but you know, there are no cameras, so we really cannot tell what has happened. I would like to get your overall thought on this story.
First and foremost, I think I need to ask some very salient questions from what we have seen on that video or that picture there. Those children, are they really the people undergoing the trials? That's first one. The same people that are in that picture, are they the graduates? Are they the ones that have wives and children? You know, you don't whip up sentiments when, you know, the law does not even look at sentiments. The law looks at facts available before the court and not sentiments. If you're saying these people are graduates,
these children,
I mean, those children are graduates, they have wives and children, then we have a fundamental problem. Well, I say we have a fundamental problem that needs to be addressed on its own, and is a discussion for another day.
What do you mean by fundamental problem? I would like to understand. I'm trying to follow you.
Now, why I say it's a fundamental problem, you know, I always speak in parable. You can always convince a blind man that the soup he's eating doesn't have oil, because we have plant oil, natural oil, and animal oil. But you see, salt and pepper is one. We don't have animal.
He can find that out himself.
A blind man from his taste bud will find out that one. You don't need any soothsayer to tell the blind man that this. So that's the question I'm asking. That these people, are they the people, quote and unquote, that are graduates? Are they the ones that have wives and children? The law has no room for sentiment.
These are the videos that we saw. Yes.
For me, I've never liked protest.
Why?
You know why I've never liked protest? Every protest at some point has the tendency of turning into a violent protest. Why I say so is that from my little study about sociology and protest, so many people join it at different points for different reasons. You might have a peaceful demonstration going on. Before you know, miscreants, hoodlums will hijack that protest and start causing mayhem. These are people who were destroying government properties, waving the flag of another country in an independent country. These are reasonable offense. Calling for military takeover in the midst of the protest. For me, the people who should or who ought to have been arrested are the organizers of the protest and not these miscreants. Because they are the ones who are...
organizers of the protest?
Yes.
Remember that the protest was intended, the intention for the protest was for it to be peaceful. So that's on the side of the organizers of the protest. So if you say arrest the organizers of the protest, why would that be? What about arrests since there have been talks?
If you carry out a peaceful demonstration, people join it at different points in time for different reasons. Like me now on the road, if that POS lady, maybe on a good day, I wanted money from her, she didn't give me, I will join the protest here. As soon as I get there, I wreak havoc on her and see how I can loot. I go my way. And once that person loots, achieve that aims, the person goes back. And other people continue. So that's the danger of protests. Because it has every tendency of turning violent. Especially peaceful, like a street demonstration. But if it's a kind of protest where you gather somewhere in a confined area, do your protest from morning to night, speakers come, they speak and they go, you discover that that one doesn't turn violent.
But is that what you think?
Of course.
Because when we go back to the NSAS protests, right? Even though there were times when movements were made, let's look at the times, most of the time during that protest, these protesters were gathered at a place.
That was why it worked. That was why it was spontaneous.
But what happened at the end?
At the end of the day, they used force to dislodge them, which
so did it make any difference?
Led to the death of innocent people. And since then, the police, they have become very professional. The era of police rascality and impunity after that SARS protest, it has reduced.
Really?
Yes, it has reduced minimally. The police, they have become very professional in their approach.
Wow. That's your thoughts anyway.
Yes. Take it to the bank.
Because there are people who do not agree to that school of thought.
They have become very professional.
We still hear cases on the other side. Yes, of course we have officers who have become very professional.
Because nobody wants to lose his or her job.
Yes, and especially with the whole social media.
One place, you don't move about.
How do we encourage such a protest again when the previous one did not end so well?
We have the Azigboro Park. We have the Azigboro Park.
What is the guarantee that this one is going to be different?
If you get Azigboro Park, we have the parking lot at the Yakubu Gowon Stadium. At Doki Amia Simaka.
That's the same way they said we have the Lekki toll gates. And they gathered there.
They went there.
So what happened? That's what I'm trying to show you.
The protest gathered
it did not
momentum.
end well.
Fine, it did not end well.
So why are we encouraging? Why, no, not that encouraging. Why? How come you're still saying that is the best way to protest?
For me, it's the best where you stay in a confined environment than moving around the streets. If you move around,
Although there's a development to that story, just that I didn't go into it. But then someone mentioned the special place, the special side of the correctional center that they talked about when they were making reference to Bobrisky's case. Although we have a story on that talking about Bobrisky, let's even talk about it. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) has confirmed the rearrest of Idris Okuneye, popularly known as Bobrisky in Lagos. The controversial cross-dresser was obtained and flown to Abuja for questioning. EFCC spokesperson Dele Oyewole stated that Bobrisky attempted to evade authorities by failing to respond to an invitation and trying to leave the country. Bobrisky was removed from an Amsterdam-bound flight on Thursday night by immigration officers, reportedly at EFCC's request. On social media, he shared that he sustained injuries during the confrontation, alleging the EFCC orchestrated his detention. The incident follows previous legal troubles with Bobrisky, previously sentenced to 6 months in prison by a Lagos Federal High Court for naira abuse in April 2024. Rumors later emerged that he was moved from Kirikiri prison after 3 weeks, allegedly for a 15 million naira bribe, which you probably are aware of. You probably are aware of this story already. A lot of people have followed this one. But then EFCC has said he was trying to run away, and then we had to catch him and bring him back. That is the case here. What are your thoughts on this one? You know, we're talking about Bobrisky earlier.
Yeah, I think he also attempted escaping through the borders. He was sent
Semi-border, yes. Just how many days ago that was reported?
He was sent back. He also boarded a plane wanting to escape to Amsterdam. He was also brought back. You see, I tell people, whoever carries a termite-infested firewood home should get ready for the visits of lizard. You don't go to the bush, you see this firewood that has termites, you carry it and bring it home. Lizards will definitely visit you. So he has made a statement how he paid 15 million naira and he was given some form of...
He said it was not his voice, that it was AI generated. AI must be very powerful.
Artificial intelligence generated. So he should come and substantiate his claim, prove himself, and if the law says he's innocent, he will definitely walk away.
But he was invited and he did not, heed to that invitation, and yet was flying out of the country.
But he heeded to the invitation. Was he able to attend?
No, he did not heed to the invitation, but then they found out that he was moving out of the country.
That's the problem. Even my Bible says it's only an evil man that runs where no man pursues him.
The EFCC has said, come and tell us the people that you said, were part of this bribe. Since you have mentioned, the EFCC is known for fighting corruption. So if you're laying an allegation on such a body, then you need to come out with your facts.
Of course.
That's what they call it.
He needs to come out. They invited him. He refused to honor the invitation. Rather, he attempted to escape through the land and also by air. And by God's grace...
The next one now might be through the sea.
So by God's grace, he's been caught.
Yes.
Let him come and face the consequences of his utterances. There is no big deal. If he says it's artificial intelligence, no problem. Let him prove it. And at the end of the day, if he's free, he will definitely walk home. So I don't see any reason why he's running from pillar to post, running helter-skelter without honoring invitation. That's where I have my very big question.
No, that's another thing we need to look at. When an individual does not honor the invitation of the EFCC, the police, whatever, what happens to that individual? Does it mean they just keep waiting for the individual to just get ready whenever he wants and come honor the invitation? That's another question.
It's not done that way. It's not at your behest.
So why is it looking, it's almost looking that way?
Yeah, because for every invitation, there's always a timeline, there's a date. And once the person refuses to honor that invitation,
pick him up.
It's arrest.
All right. On electricity, we've been following up the story on the blackouts in the north. Well, Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, has successfully restored power supply through the Gombe-Damaturu-Maiduguri 330 kV transmission line. According to TCN, General Manager of Public Affairs Ndidi Mba, power was restored on the Gombe-Damaturu section at 7:25 p.m. on October 30 and on the Damaturu-Maiduguri segment at 2:01 p.m. on October 31, 2024. The line had been out of service since September 22, 2024 due to vandalism of Tower 372. Reconstruction was completed on October 23, but immediate power restoration was delayed by additional vandalism on the Ugwaji-Aper transmission line. TCN urges the public to help prevent further vandalism, which jeopardizes the stability of Nigeria's power infrastructure. Citizens are encouraged to report any suspicious activity near power installations to local authorities or TCN offices. Okay.
Yes, that brings me to a very, very important question. Who are the people doing this vandalism?
Big question.
They need to identify the people. For me, like I always tell people, the best way to fight crime and criminality is by being proactive and not reactionary. You don't wait for things to happen before you start putting them in place. You envisage based on previous occurrences. You identify who these people are. These are things that you don't just steal and put in your pocket. These are things that they gather them before they move. It's not like sweet or chewing gum or even biscuit where you just steal and put in the cloth and you walk away. It takes to. So there should be proper surveillance on those lines, either by air, drone, camera, or whichever means, so that at the end of the day, they know who and who that are perpetrating this dastard act. For me, an ordinary person cannot go to a transmission line to disrupt. It must be someone who knows that this is a transmission line. And also the person will know that there's an outage. Because if you go there when there's you will be roasted.
So the outage must have been for some time that gave them the liberty to, relax and do all of the magic they wanted to do there.
So this whole thing is like bunkering.
So that's enough security. That's enough security, don't you think?
No, so they need to trace it.
Making sure we have 24 hours.
They need to trace it even from their own end.
Okay.
To know who gives information that so there's outage, you can go now and disconnect. Once you disconnect, you start. And listen, it takes time to loosen. So if there's proper surveillance on that line, for crying out loud, things like this shouldn't come up. It won't happen. So it's not sweet, it's not biscuit, where you steal and put in your pocket.
And now, a lot of monies have gone down.
So it takes a concerted effort to carry out this vandalization. And who are the receivers? Because it's not the peasant, it's not me and you that buy some of these items. Seen from the system there.
And what exactly happened?
What's happened?
But for a whole region to be on blackout for as long as that, and if this was already known to, I think other states should just take leave from this. Other regions should take leave from this. This has happened. All right, so we'll talk about the way forward, moving forward. What do we do? So it is obvious that other regions have to take leave of this so that we don't get more blackouts in some other regions.
This is being caused by vandalization. So if it's even caused by vandalization, it makes it easy.
The police announced their intent to investigate how he obtained the uniform and under whose authority he acted. In response to the situation, Very Dark Man issued a public apology, clarifying that his video was not intended to impersonate the police. He urged the public to seek official permission before using any law enforcement attire to prevent misunderstandings. Okay, so the message was duly passed. Because when Bobrisky was arrested for Naira abuse, we heard talks about, oh, they just wanted to pass a message to the public with that as an example. Yes, let me bring you in so I don't finish the analysis before you come in.
It's very funny. He knows that you need to seek approval, permission from police authority, or not even just police, any uniform agency for you to use their uniform.
Yes.
If he knows all this, then why did he not seek approval from them?
That's the thing. Did he not seek approval? That's what we need to look at. Because from their story, from the Nigeria police, they said that they will carry out investigations to know on whose authority he did this. This is a serious action that doesn't look like there was no authority backing it up.
For me, I think the very dark man, with his level of exposure and enlightenment,
Influence.
I don't think he would do such without taking permission. Okay, even if he did it without taking permission, okay, let the police investigate how he got the uniform. If it was hired from a police officer, they should know the police officer that gave him the uniform. If he bought material from the open market, which open market did he buy the material from, and who is also the tailor?
Oh my God!
That made
everybody is going for this.
Then also these ranks, the police ranks which he got, where did he get them from? So these are the investigations they need to carry out to forestall future occurrences, so that because already we've had issues and stories where people impersonate wearing police and military uniform with full ranks to perpetrate crimes outside,
thereby putting the individual in trouble.
So it is better let the police dig deep into this. It shouldn't be swept under the carpet because it's a very dark man that is involved. Let them do it so that tomorrow nobody will wake up to wear either the police, army, or any paramilitary uniform to impersonate when you are not.
I think Nigerians know better regarding the army uniform. Some of them have, experienced it firsthand.
So that's the.
Have you seen when they are drilling an individual who wore a camouflage?
Of course, I've seen it. So for me, the police should investigate how.
Like this. What is the problem? Is it that people are not properly, they don't have the proper orientation? Or what could we hinge it on? What could we hold on to as the issue behind some of these actions that they are carrying out in the name of funny clips or skits?
Passing a message. But if you see the skit makers, the way they do theirs and that of very dark man, they are two different scenarios.
No, his was a different.
He's a perfect. But if you see the skit makers, when you see them, you know that these are not real.
That they sewed the uniform.
There are differences. It's not as direct, complete as the way very dark man appears. So there's difference between the skit makers and that.
But if it's against the law, then it's against the law.
Yeah, but it's not direct. Even movie makers.
The character.
Well, I know most of the skit makers, movie makers, 80% or 90% of them, they portray the force in a very bad light. Looking at the ills, the bad side of the force. But, like I said also, it's part of the checks and balances in the system. If I have a bad attitude to work, I have a bad character, and you bring it in the public, two things are involved. It's either I choose to stop or I continue at my own detriment.
What has been the case this time? Have they chosen to stop or they've decided to continue?
I think they are stopping. Now you see police, they sanction officers more often than before. You see this time around, the police, they always have a way of disciplining their these officers. It's no longer business as usual for most of them. Except the issue does. Like for me, last year I had an issue with a police officer. We had an altercation. It led to battering. The day I was released, the next day, I was in the commissioner of police office and they were invited. They were shocked how I could get across to the police commissioner in less than 48 hours. I said that's the society we find ourselves, so that going forward, you know how to treat people. The man was literally begging. But when I got there, I said, well, so long as I brought him here, I only want to teach him a lesson that going forward, he should know how to treat people and how to, but I'm no longer interested in prosecuting or going forward with the case. I think I need to drop it here.
But that means from what you have said, it simply means that the media has done a lot,
of course,
in highlighting some of these ills that are happening.
Of course.
That is for people who have the kind of connection, you know, to even get to the you need to have connection.
Of course.
And this is very funny, because why would you, a Nigerian should be enough. The fact that you're a citizen should be enough reason you should be able to get to the commissioner of police. But then you need to have a the particular connection, know who would link you up there. And a lot of ills have been covered. A lot of people who did not have voices, you know, theirs have been swept under the carpet, and nobody gets to talk about it. So with the skit makers that we have mentioned, to the movie makers and the media highlighting these things, you have also agreed that it has brought some sort of positive impact to this system. So do we say bring it down? Do we encourage them to continue, you know, highlighting all of these things and putting it to the face of the public to really know what is going on?
Of course, it should, so that it should serve as a check and balance. Because there's this local parable in my place that every stubborn masquerade should have someone with a rope to drag the masquerade back. Any stubborn masquerade that doesn't have someone with a rope holding that masquerade has the ability to damage things. So that's why for those of us who come from villages, every stubborn masquerade, they have people who are pulling them back with rope.
That's a discovery for some of us. but then let's go back to the topic for discussion now. Are they doing it too much? Because remember, when we talk about what goes out there, especially our local content, our local content, online content, is everywhere in the world now compared to what it used to be. So don't you think it's showing us in a light, in a not so good light, showing our force in a not so good light to the world?
For me, amongst every 12, there's a Judas. So if the skit makers, movie makers want to be exposing the Judas within the system, so be it. But within the rank and file of the Nigerian, we have so many wonderful police officers.
So why not balance? Why not talk about balancing?
Let them keep exposing the bad side, and we'll also talk about the good side of the police.
This is not. Aside just the police now, how do you think this is affecting the image of the country outside, and then the individuals who represent those countries when we move outside, when we travel out?
You know, there's one thing I see about the Americans and the British. Most of the things happening within their shores only showcase the good side of it. It's just the few ones that are bad, that's the ones they bring into public domain. They've been able to manage theirs. You know, information management matters a lot also. In the media, I think there's what people call information management. It's not every information you take out to public the way it is, so that I don't send a wrong signal outside. So there they've been able to carry out a proper information management system. But we here, we are even the ones selling out, because one, before it happens, it's already in the public domain.
But that's what, it looks like that's what sells better these days.
Of course, bad news.
So how do you even...
It sounds like wildfire.
How do you even curb that problem when these guys are cashing out from it? How do you tell them no when that's actually where they're making money?
No, but if it's for the good of the public, exposing the bad side of the force.
No,
So,
you know, we're talking about balancing it, and not just the force now.
but I think most of the things they expose is the ills of the society.
Yes.
Why they also expose the ills of the society is for people to be aware. So that going forward, when you're met with this kind of situation, you already have a mental picture of what's going to happen. So it's a two-way thing. Apart from the fact that also putting or trying to expose the ills of the society, they are also informing you and I to be smart. I know I always tell people there's what we call the street smartness.
There is definitely what we call the street
smartness. And no matter how intelligent you are,
not
if you're not street smart,
not everybody has it. You know, if you live in Nigeria and you're not street smart, you have a story to tell your children.
Of course.
You would definitely have a story, because kids who are street smart will outsmart you who's an adult.
Shut up.
And you'll be wondering when it happened. Like, it will happen with...
That's the society we find ourselves. So you must be street smart.
I'm talking about the way the British and, you know, the foreigners, like you have mentioned, portray themselves to the media or to the world. Have you noticed that even when we want to portray them in our work, in our content, we portray them in the light that they have portrayed themselves, because that's how we see them?
Of course, because it's a garbage in, garbage out. It's what they've given to us. That's also.
And then we portray ourselves the other way.
And that's.
And it's not that we don't have positivity here.
We do a whole lot.
Don't you think that is also that's a problem with our mindset and how we see ourselves? Aside the fact that we want to show the world what's happening, we want to also tell the society what's going on, to be careful, you know, pre-inform the society. Don't you think there's something wrong with the mindset of when it's local, it's not so positive, but when it's foreign? You know, we started with this when we had our very first story.
Yes, like me. You see, this whole thing, it's a function of what we've been able to send out. So, like you said, we should try as much as we can to balance it. The way we also send out bad news, we should also try as much as we can also to send out good news.
Right.
The good side.
Looking at this story now, before we wrap things up quickly, because time's no longer on our side. But looking at this story and the fact that certain people go in for an offense, for crime, and then some people are allowed to go, like you made reference to that filmmaker, and then the other people are held down. How do you think playing with the flags, the children who were probably playing with the flags,
and before you know, they'll parade them that these are the suspects?
When these suspects were paraded, I don't know how other Nigerians saw it, but I was not expecting this. I wasn't, when I saw the video, I was not expecting to see kids.
No, for me, I saw pictures and videos of the riots, especially up north.
Okay.
Most of the people who perpetrated were children, minors. Well, it even got to a point that even road slabs, they were damaging slabs. They go to public building, party secretary, they remove roof, they remove window, they remove door.
And these were children removing roofs, windows, and doors.
Of course. If you see the extent of damage.
So the question is, who sends them?
That's to get the sponsors.
So why have we not heard so much about
to go after
getting
the sponsors and the organizers?
Because there are more children on the streets, right?
Of course.
And if the organizers, if the sponsors now of these activities are still out there, it simply means that it is possible for more children to be incorporated in the same old system.
Of course. You know, these street children, I have never liked
That's
them.
the out of school thing we've been talking about.
If you go to some places in GRA, around that Sani Abacha Road, this Professor Baowe, we have so many street children. You see them looking very dirty. I don't even know where they come from. You see them in clusters. And these are security threats. I've always looked at that setting, those children, with huge disdain. I don't even dignify them, even when I don't even answer them. I don't answer them because I know these are time bombs waiting to explode.
And looking at the number from the statistics that have been given, you'd realize that it's going to be a lot, especially in the future. How can we solve that problem and prevent the time bomb from exploding? You're not the first person mentioning that.
It's to address hunger. Because so many families have failed. We have so many failed families who can no longer provide for their children the basics. And you see most of these children outside. So even the family, they have lost them.
So what about taking these children in? What about taking these children in?
Taking these children off the street takes a lot. First, it starts with a level of advocacy and enforcement. But even before you start the enforcement, you must make provision where they will be kept. and how they'll be rehabilitated before re-injecting them back to the society.
Okay, so orientation, rehabilitation before putting them back into the society.
Of course.
But
first, there must be enforcement.
Enforcement of
first,
what?
advocacy.
Okay.
Where they will talk about it, so that for those of them who are still on the streets, that are yet to go back home, they need to go back home. So that parents too, whose children are not at home, they should use the opportunity to look for them. Because if government gets them, this and this is what's going to happen to them. So by the time they're enforced, you look for where to keep them. By the time you keep them, there must be that form of reorientation before you even reintegrate them back into the society. Because from the street, they have learned so many things.
What about
so many antisocial vices. Because they have been exposed to danger. So for them to be reintegrated back into the society, you need to do a lot of work on them.
What about going back to the free education? And making sure it is actually free.
First, education should be free at some level.
Especially at the basic level.
At the basic level, it ought to be free. It ought to be free. Then another question, do we have enough schools, government or public schools, to cater for these children? And some of these children too, the family, they have lost them because they can't even feed them, they can't take care of them. Some cannot even accommodate them. So they are left to wallow on their own. And these are the byproducts. These are the rippling effects of it.
So with all the schools that we have, primary schools and these basic schools, you're saying they might not be enough to accommodate the number of out-of-school children we have?
We have so many out-of-school children. And most of the public schools, they are already filled to capacity. So some of these ones, where do you put them in?
And then the system where we are told the education is free in these public schools, and then we realize it's not actually free.
But at some